Okay, today this is the material that I'm going to use to make the multiple madness. And to find the repeat, I used on the edge that has a very nice markings on what colors are used. So you can see there's a 1 here. And so the next one would be right up there for this one. If you don't have that right at the edge, like mine turned out to be, then you do go into some part of the fabric. And for example, here I would use the first level of the Eiffel Tower as my first one, and I would follow on down until I found it again and make sure that that is your actual repeat. And you will see that having this here, it's on line 1, this one's on 24. So this is a 23, it's about a 23 and a half repeat. So that means I should be able to get 21 medallions when I'm doing this. So when you are going up to actually buy this fabric, you will use this level of the Eiffel Tower and over to this one. That's 1, 2, 6. Now you see why you have to find something that's really easy to find. 7, 12. Okay, so that's, I have 12 repeats, and yes, I have extra material. I always buy extra material. Okay, once you have figured out how far that is, now you go back and you measure how much material that is. And yes, it does take a lot. In general, if you have a 22 to 24 inch repeat, you will end up buying approximately 8 yards of fabric. But as I said, once you've done that, you go back, and this is where you go up and you ask the whoever's cutting your fabric to measure what you just found. Okay, and this one is 8 yards of fabric plus another half yard because I like to do that. Okay, Chris has a different.
This is the one, yeah, this is the one I'm going to use today. This has a 12-inch repeat. And so again, always look here on this printed selvage edge. And this is where you're going to do your, find your repeat. I'm not going to use the printed colors on here because I have like this much that we don't like wasting fabric. So I'm going to find something, you know, in this area that I can easily find, you know, again. And so for instance, I've got these leaves here, and if I come in about a half an inch, that's kind of allowing for, well, if the edge is a little wonky, you're allowing for about a half an inch of wonkiness. And so I'm going to use here. Well, the next time it shows up is here. And to be sure, you can see I have this blue flower, I have this pink flower, and so I can use that. And if I go from here in this same spot, you can see that I'm at the 12 inches. And so this is a 12-inch repeat. Now, when I bought this fabric, it was near the end of the bolt, and I thought, well, if I can get at least 4 yards, then I might be able to make 7 medallions, or if I cut them smaller, which you can do, I still might get, you know, more than 7, you know, and I kind of like to get at least 16 if I can. So cutting them smaller will allow me to do that. And so again, I'm going to go through and I'm going to count, which I did do this, and I did get 12 repeats, you know, when I bought this. So there's 1, 2, 3, 12, and I even have a 13th one. Many of the customers and the students that come and take Multiple Madness, they prefer to get a whole additional repeat. So Cinda had about a half a repeat extra, where a lot of them want a whole repeat extra in case they have a cutting error. They have a whole repeat that they can actually bring in and maybe use with their stuff. Here at the store, and any store you purchase your fabric at for your Multiple Madness, we ask them, don't just do the math. Don't say it's 12 repeats times 12. That's 144 inches divided by 36, and this is how many yards I need. Because you have to make sure you have 12 repeats, and what if you want that 13th one to have the extra? So we put a pin in it, we'll put a clip on it, and then we'll come back here to the beginning and we will measure how many yards it takes to make it with a 12-inch repeat. If I had wanted to be able to make it like Cinda is making it and get 21 repeats, I would have had to buy twice as many repeats. When you are doing Multiple Madness and you're cutting your strips, which you'll see when we get to that point, you need 22.5 inches. So 12 inches isn't going to get you 21. 12 inches is going to get you 7 if you use the full template. If you want more, you need to be able to double that, so you have about 23, more than 22.5, because you got ragged edges as you've cut it. So 23, 24 is always good. So if I wanted more repeats or more medallions, then I would have gotten a fabric that I could have gotten 8 yards on instead of 4 yards, for instance, so that I would have enough to do more medallions.
Okay, now for the fun part. This is where everybody goes, "You're kidding." No, we're not kidding. You've got your fabric, you have your fold. You're going to go up to the fold and you're going to make a snip. And then for the entire yardage, whether it be 8 or 4, anything in between, you're just going to rip. And the reason for this is material will rip much straighter than trying to cut it. So that's why we have that. Okay, now we've got that cut. And at this point, you're going to take half the material. My suggestion is to take the half that has all the information on it, and you're going to fold that up and you're going to put it away. Because for making your 21 medallions, you only need half of the fabric. This is not a waste by any stretch of the imagination. This fabric that you are putting away can be used in your borders. You can use it in your background, but plan on using it somewhere. Because once you get your medallions made, it's so much fun to show people what the original material looked like. And then they can say, "You're kidding, it didn't all come from that." And you can say, "Yeah, yes it did."
Okay, so now we're ready to cut our 12 repeats. Now to do that, I'm only using the half that I kept. The other half I folded up, I put it away. I like using it for my borders to show people this is what the original fabric looked like. And then I'm going to decide where am I going to start my first repeat. And I like to pick something that's easy to find. And so I've got this pink flower here on the edge. And the reason it's different than what I was showing you when I started, when I showed you the repeat, is because it's on the other side. This shows you how different this side can be that's why you can't count on, I can use both halves. I'll buy half as much fabric and I'll use both halves, because you can't turn it around and necessarily lay it on top of the other and find the same repeat. It may not have been printed that way. So I want to clean up this edge a little bit, and I want to make sure that I am using an area that I want to start at and can find the rest of them. So I'm cutting off about a 1/2 inch, and so now that I've got that edge squared up, now I'm going to find that same flower, and it's right here. Okay, and so I double check to make sure that it's the same flower by looking at what else is around it. Okay, so I have that, and then from that there's the blue. So I'm going to cut here, and then I'm going to find that flower again, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep moving this down, but as I cut them, I'm going to stack them on top of each other as I cut them. And so I'm going to cut this one again, and I'm stacking in the same way. All my selvage edges are going to line up the same. Okay, so I've cut all 12, but I want to make sure I've got 12. How many times have you thought you counted the number you needed and you were short or over? So I'm going to make sure that I have 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, because I thought I had an extra repeat, and I have a 13th one on here. And we've had times when, after we've cut all 12, stacked them up, realized one of the repeats wasn't cut correctly. That's why it's nice to have the extra repeat, just in case you need it. And so now the job is going to be for me to stack these up and try to get them as even as I can this way, so that I'm going to go over, and I'm using a tagging gun, or you can use a needle and thread, and I'm allergic to hand sewing, so Cinda's going to show you how to do it with needle and thread, and I'm going to show you how to do it with a tagging gun and get the same results. So, and then we have had some students that have issues with their hands. Maybe they have arthritis, and so handling a needle and thread is not easy for them, and so a tagging gun is another method that you can use to do your basting. It's not a lot of basting. We only need 6 to 8 areas that we have gone up and down at the same spot that many times. And so now I've taken, and I'm going to shake these and try to get them to line up. You know how it is to line up fabric. Doesn't always work the way you want it. And now I am going to go, and I'm going to start with my basting. And it's going to be very important to keep these in the same order As you're basting, you want to make sure as you're basting one doesn't get flipped, for instance, and you're going through and it's flipped back there and you're just looking here and you totally miss the one that folded over. So as you baste, you count from 1 to 12 every time. So if you're doing 6 to 8 basting stitches, you're going to count that 6 to 8 times to make sure that we get all 12 at every spot. Okay, so I'm going to baste mine, and I'm going to use this tagging gun, and it's like what they use at the retail stores to put those price tags on, and that you have to clip off when you get home, or you forget to clip off and you wear them for a while, you know, when you're out and about. But what I'm looking for is a spot. I like to start in the middle. You can start on an edge and work your way down. I like to start in the middle and work my way out to the edges. And so I'm lifting up the first layer of my 12, and I'm going to find a spot that I can easily find on every layer. So I'm going to use this spot right here, right kind of in the valley of those leaves by that flower, and then I'm going to fold it back and I'm going to count 1, and then I'm going to find it again, and here is 2. And it's a good idea to count out loud. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then you'll see that it has gone through all 12 layers. And with this tagging gun now, all I have to do is pull the trigger, and it has brought my piece of plastic through the whole thing. Now after, you'll see kind of how rumpled this is after doing that. So in between, you are going to make sure that everything is laying flat. And I can see here that I've got some folded over pieces, and this could create some real heartache later on if I find out that they weren't right. And then I am going to make sure that, you know, this is in there, and I am going to, I can feel underneath if that fabric, you know, feels flat and straight. Okay, so then I'm going to do my next one. Okay, so now once I've done that, you know, I've seen people do this a lot of different ways. I use my fist, and so I take my fist from where this one, last one I did, and I go here, and now I look for a spot here, somewhere here, that I can find, and it doesn't have to be exactly up here, because here's another valley by a leaf that is going to be easy to find. So I'm going to start counting again. 1, 12. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. I got all 12. Okay, so now I'm going to punch that through again. This time it all came out the way it was supposed to. And again, after I've done that, I want to make sure that I don't have any folds like there, and I am straightening it out. And don't worry, we're only doing this 6 to 8 times, you know, to make it work. And it really doesn't matter when you see that these edges aren't all even. We're going to square those up after. You know, but right now it's important that we're going down in the same spot and getting these fabrics all lined up. Don't fool yourself into thinking, well, I can just eyeball these layers, you know, to be lined up with each other, and it'll be good enough. You'll see when you make your medallions, it won't be good enough. You know, because if you take the time to do this now, and this is what takes the longest during our class, from the time they come in at 9 a.m., then they're ripping their fabric, they're cutting their layers, you know, each of their repeats, stacking them up, and doing their hand sewing, or their matching up like I'm doing now, the basting. And then after they get that done, then we cut the medallions, which you'll see happen really quickly, and then they start sewing. By noon, they have at least 2 medallions done. So, you know, we spend, oh, maybe you have 2 by the end of the day. But you're sewing by noon. Yes, Cinda is reminding me, no, it's by the end of the day. But we did have somebody have 9 done by the end of the day before. You know, you always have those overachievers in class, and that's okay. What we're going to be doing is, it's not so much keeping it together while you're doing your wedges. It's, we are going to subcut these widths smaller. If you have 23.5, 24 inches of fabric, they're going to get cut into 3 7.5-inch strips from this selvage edge to that ripped edge. Mine, I'm going to cut mine into 2. Not sure what size that's going to be, because if you'll see, these are uneven over here on the edges, okay, on both sides. And so before I cut, I'm going to have to square these up so that I have 12 all the way nice, and 12 layers all nice and even. And so I think maybe I am done, you know, with that part where I can actually square these up now. And then I just want to make sure that all of my little tagging plastic tags here are kind of pulled up, and that it's got all my fabric lined up, because that's going to be the important part, you know, there. So what I've done is I have looked at this edge, and I'm looking in the whole stack of 12 for the one that's the shortest, because I have got to have all these exactly the same size, so they all get cut once, which is why in the book it tells you to have a 60 millimeter rotary cutter, because you're cutting through all 12 layers. Also, brand new blade, highly recommended. And then I am using the mat to line up a line. So I've figured out where my shortest one was, and then I lined it up so that shortest one was on that line, lined up the other direction, so that when I cut it, I was going to cut all at once. Now I'm going to do the other side. This one, the shortest one, seems to be the last few that are here. So this is where it's short. So I'm finding a line on, you know, on the mat, that I make sure that it's just slightly over that line, and then the ones that are longer on top will get caught in. And I'm also trying to see if I can line it up with a line here, still have those caught in there, and they look like they're going to get caught in. And now I'm going to square that up, and I'm going to put my ruler down so that I'm on that line at the tip and here at the beginning. and you cut and stop, walk your fingers up, cut and stop, walk your fingers up, check to make sure it cut all the way through before you move your ruler. Because once you move your ruler, you'll probably never get it lined back up in the same spot again. Okay, so what I've ended up with, because mine was a shorter repeat, I have ended up with a piece that is 11 inches, which is kind of nice because I was hoping I could get 5.5-inch medallions, and half of 11 is 5.5. How wonderful is that? So if you're making 21 medallions and you have a repeat of, let's say, 24 inches, then you would cut, after you've squared up these two edges, you would cut 3 7.5-inch strips, where I'm going to cut 2 5.5-inch strips. And I'm going to get about 14. Actually, I think I'll be able to get more than that because I'm making them smaller. My medallions are going to be smaller, and we'll show you how that happens. Don't forget to use your 60 millimeter ruler. But we'll show you how you can use your included template to make larger and smaller medallions. So now I have two strips here that I am going to start turning into wedges to make my medallions.
Okay, I'm going to show you how to do the hand basting in case you don't have a tag gun. The first thing you need is a very long needle. Give you an idea here, and it needs to be very sharp. Okay, you will want thread that contrasts quite a bit with your fabric. So I have this bright pink. When you cut your first piece of thread, you're not going, you know, the whole yard length from fingertip to fingertip, which often is, because your thread will not. So you don't want it too long, but you are going to be doubling it. So you can thread your needle, and this needle does happen to have a nice size eye in it. Okay, and you are using a double thread. So go down, match these up, and you know, you can thread it whichever way is convenient for you. I happen to like a way where you take the open end and you wrap it around the needle, and I usually do about 5 times. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can even do 6. Okay, then you just sort of squish it down the needle and the whole way down to your thread. Okay, and the reason I like to do it for this, you'll notice that that has a pretty good size knot along with a good size tail. Okay, and then I will probably, sometimes depending on, I will knot it again. Reason we're doing this, we do not want this to come out. This knot needs to stay where I put it in the fabric. Okay, so we've got our 12 layers of fabric. I usually start down in a corner and work my way up. In this case, and we're going to find an area here in the corner. You don't need to be right next to the edge because we will be cutting off these places that don't match and working in. So I am going to use something easy to find, which in this case is the edge of this little postcard. Okay, right there in that corner. And you always start from the top. So we're going to take this corner And as you go through, you are going to count. So that was 1. Get really tired of counting by the time you're done. Seven. Now you'll notice I am holding on to the needle. You do not let go of that needle for anything. And 12. Now once you get down to the bottom, okay, you hold on to both ends of the needle, both this end down here, this end up here. That's one of the reasons it's good to have a really nice long one. And you're going to shake your fabric. You can pick it up if you want to. One thing about having the 24-inch, it is a little bit, it's a lot to work with. And when you do take your hand off like I just did, just make sure that you are holding on down there at the bottom so it does not go anywhere. Okay, once you have it nice and straight and you're holding, okay, I have got, okay, I have got my fingers around the bottom, okay, and I am going to bring it up, and I've got one finger right along the edge of this, so I can pull this needle back and I know where it is because I can feel it with my finger. So I pull it back so that we have maybe 1/2 inch, and I come up. Now it's not important when you come up that it's in the exact same spot. Don't know why that works, but it does. It's where you go down that's the important part. Okay, once you have there, then you can pull up. If your needle's not real sharp and you're having trouble with that, remember you can take the head of the needle and put it on the fabric down and just push like that until you can get a good hold of it, and you pull it out. Okay, now hang on to the back so this does not knot on you. Put it in. It does not have to be super tight there. You can put it, I mean, you want it up next to the fabric, but it doesn't have to be right on top of it tight. Okay, so that just so it does not go anywhere. Now the next thing I want to do is go another 5 inches, and you can do this. You could either go, you know, in this direction, but there's nothing there, so I don't want to do that. You can go in this direction, okay, so that you have someplace. Your main goal is not to go straight across, but to have some here, up here, down here, up there, over there, just in general, so that it will hold while you're working on it. So in this case, I am going to go from here to, and I usually do the width of my fingers like this, and that puts me, I'm going to do the bottom of that F right there. Okay, so here again, you will take your needle, you'll go down, and you will count as you go, making sure that you have not skipped any fabric. And that was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it always feels so good when you get down to the end and say, okay, it's the right number. Again, I just run my needle back and forth a little bit here to get it nice and straight. Okay. Hanging on to it so it doesn't go anywhere, because you want some on top, you want some on the bottom, so you can run it nice nice and straight. Once you've got the area around the needle in good shape, I'm putting my other hand underneath there, making sure again that it stays nice up and straight up and down. I am holding on to the bottom of the needle, and then I am feeling how far back I'm bringing it, and bring it up.
You can open it. Yeah.
Okay, bring it up through there, and then pull it up.
We do this class here.
Okay, and once you have it out and it's hanging like that, we are shaking, just shaking on it, and then you want to make sure, because when you start smoothing it out like this, you will be able to feel any pleats that you have made and whether you need to do that again. Much better, much better. Okay, so once you do that, then you're going to pick another one. In this case, instead of sticking along the edge, I would come back into the middle and do that. If you do a piece of thread that is approximately from fingertip to fingertip, a little bit smaller than that, you can probably do this 3 times and then change threads. If you make it a little bit smaller, obviously you can only do 2, because once you finish, then you want to, I've already started one over here, so when you finish, you want to have a nice long tie, and then you can just keep making knots, and again make them as long, as many knots as you can, so it will not go down through the fabric. The big important part is that thread stays where it's supposed to be. Anyways, you go through here and you leave the ties out there, because if it should happen to slip through, then you've got this, because if it goes through even 1 or 2, you have to start over. Okay, so just continue going over to the side, up on the side, through the middle, and we'll be back when I have this finished so you can get an idea of how many you need.